Thank you, Katrina. Oh, goodness gracious. Katrina, by the way, this year received the honor of being the best actress in a musical in Richmond, Virginia this year, okay? For Billie Holiday, thank you. Aren't we blessed? 10 years together, huh?
Yeah, in January.
That's right. Fantastic. Well, I think you probably know I'm going to talk about zeal this morning. Enthusiasm, okay? We started this series 1st of November, and Patty did Harvesting Faith, where she talked about the power of faith, how to harvest that, how to direct it. Then last week I talked about the power of imagination and how we can use imagination to really manage our lives and direct our lives and be in control of our thinking and be in the Christ presence rather than being of the world. We are in the world, but of the world. And then today I want to talk about this idea of harvesting zeal. And zeal is enthusiasm, okay? It is energy that's directed. Zeal is not excitement. Excitement comes when I go to a VCU game and they're playing Richmond, and I am happy that Richmond is winning, which doesn't very often happen. Your excitement is getting in the way of my message. But anyway. So that's excitement. See, excitement comes from without. Zeal, enthusiasm, comes from within. It comes from you as God. Paul wrote to Timothy. Timothy was Paul's disciple. The word Timothy in Greek means honoring God. Timothy was not only a disciple, he was also a writer and helped Paul actually write some of the letters that were written. But Paul wrote to Timothy because Timothy also was a very timid guy. He was kind of a shy guy, and he had to be motivated. And so Paul said this to him. This is why I remind you to fan into flames the spiritual gift God gave you when I laid my hands on you. For God has not given us a spirit of fear and timidity, but of power, love, and self-discipline. And so the first question I have for you, are you living in fear or are you living in the power of love? And I know most all of you are living in the power of love when you choose to do that. I feel it. I experience it. I'm excited about that. Now, there's a story about a knight who served his king with great loyalty. And this was a knight that was filled with enthusiasm, filled with zeal, filled with the energy to go out and take care of whatever needed to be taken care of for his king. And he would go into battle. And over time he became so enthusiastic that he went his own way. He would start the battles against the king's enemies. And he was returning home after a particularly hard-fought battle. And the king saw him from the window and came down to greet him. And this knight was in total disarray. His armor was dented. He was bruised. He had an arm kind of limping like this because it probably was broken. His horse was crippled and kind of moving along unsteadily. He was about to fall off of the horse. And he didn't look like anything like the knight that this king knew. So the king came out and said, "What in the world happened? You've always won the battle." He said, "Oh, I won the battle." He said, "I want you to know that what I did is I went to the west and I took care of all of your enemies. I got even with your enemies." And the king said, "Well, I don't have any enemies in the west." And the knight said, "Well, you do now." Okay? Now, now that's what happens when our zeal is not controlled, when we don't use good wisdom and good sense. Now, most of you think that I really was making a mistake this morning. You know? I mean, you really thought all those things were a mistake. I just wanted to demonstrate to you what uncontrolled zeal was, okay? And I'm also demonstrating that I can lie with a straight face. But anyway, so I want you to know that when we really get out of control, all kinds of things can go the wrong way. Zeal or enthusiasm or our energy can be dampened. We all know that. We've experienced it, okay? It can be dampened by a number of things. One of the things that can dampen it is the idea if only. You see, when we think if only, we get in the way of our daydreams. We get in the way of our imagination. We get in the way of the power that we are. And all of us have our if-only moments. My dad spent most of his adult career saying if only, or lifetime. Now, he wasn't angry about it. He just said it was a mistake. And what the if only was all about was that my dad had an opportunity at, I think it was $25 or $50 an acre, or $10 an acre, to buy 50 acres in what is now the heart of Newport News. Way out, they thought then. And my grandfather talked him out of it and said, that's just not a good investment. And today, the city hall, the new structure, all sits right in that area. And Dad would always ride by and go, if only I had purchased that like I had a chance to, we would be multimillionaires right now. When Mother passed away, there's a cemetery there in Newport News, and that cemetery is in that 50-acre plot. And he said to me on that day, if only I had purchased this land, we would be multimillionaires. Okay? And he was 87 years old at the time, 89 years old at the time. So Dad had an if only that he kind of hung out with, and he used to laugh about it, but I think in some ways he said, if only, if only. I decided by the time I was 18 years old that I would not have any if onlys in my life because of the fact that Dad had told this story so often. And especially in real estate, I was not going to have any if onlys. I was fairly new out of college and had my first job, and my uncle came to me, who was a real estate agent. And he said, I want to show you, it's called Warwick Shores now, I want to show you 2 lots, Richard, you can buy for $5,000 a piece. They're each 2 acres, and they're on the water. And so I went and looked at them. And he said, now I can loan you, make sure you get the money to buy these, you don't have to pay anything, you'll pay $300 a month or whatever it was, and you can have it, and then you can sell it in a couple of years. And I said, are you crazy? I'm not going to go $10,000. What a risk that is, okay? Well, 2 or 3 years later, each lot sold for $20,000. And so I started off my life with the if only, as my dad started off, see? But I didn't want that to get in the way of my dreams. I didn't want that to get in the way of what I could become. I could have hung into that and said, I'll never have any more real estate, I'll never do anything, and it could have, I could have just stopped in my tracks and not be willing to take any risk. But I think I was born as a risk taker within reason, I hope. So we all have our if only moments. The idea is to not let them get in our way of the future. The second thing that can happen to dampen our enthusiasm is complacency. Everything is okay. I'm feeling good. And there's nothing wrong with that. And I don't need to change. So please don't tell me there's more to truth than there is. I got the truth. I own the truth. And since I have it and I own it, nobody can change my mind about it. Now, that gets in the way of enthusiasm, I'll guarantee you. It gets in the way of growth. It gets in the way of understanding we have purpose in this life and that we need to move forward. And that this zeal, this enthusiasm, you see, is the power of going forward. That's what Charles Fillmore called it. The power to go forward, to make a difference, to make a change. So we don't want to be complacent, and we can all be there from time to time. I said it earlier that I'm pretty convinced that if I had the right easy chair and the right TV program that could keep my attention the rest of my life, and I had somebody to wait on me, that I would not get out of that chair. None of those 3 things exist. Once in a while, on a pretty regular basis, I'm waited on. I must admit that. Thank you for that. But I'm also reminded if I sit in the chair, there are other things I need to do. And I shouldn't be sitting in the chair all day long. So we can become, again, this idea of complacent, and we can understand it. Now, another thing that gets in our way, and this is the toughest one, is difficult circumstances. I go through a divorce, so I decide that I'll never get married again because it's going to hurt too much. I lose a pet, and I'm never going to have another pet because it hurt too much. I have a relationship that goes astray, a good friend, and it hurts too much, and I'm not going to do that again. I'm going to be close to people. I'm not going to open myself up to be loved and to love people. You see, that's because we've been in difficult circumstances, because we've lived with conditional love rather than unconditional love in our lives. And when we do that, then we get confused. Then we start to understand and say, no more. And it stops us in our tracks. And if we're not careful, we become apathetic about life. We stand in apathy. Apathy is the opposite of love, not hate. If you want to feel unloved, then talk to somebody who has total apathy about you, and you'll feel unloved. So we become apathetic if we're not careful. And that can get in the way of this idea of zeal. But we know that we can overcome all that, okay? And Paul, again, gives us some idea in Romans 12, 11, and 12 of how we can do that. He said, never be lacking in zeal, but keep your spiritual fervor, serving the Lord. Be joyful in hope, patient in affliction, faithful in prayer. So, what he's saying there is, first of all, be hopeful. Always believe that there is a light even when you're in the darkest hallway. Always believe there is a light when you're in the most difficult situation. Always believe that there is a light when you have a loss in your life. I'll guarantee you there is. But we have to believe it. We have to look for it, and we'll find the door out of the darkness into the light. That's hope. The second thing he has said is be patient. Another word for patience, in a sense, is persistence. That I continue going even though it doesn't look like I'm getting where I want to go. And so I have to have that patience. It takes a long time to get some things done. It takes a long time sometimes to really grow in the truth of who we are and understand ourselves and know that we truly are the Christ presence, that we are God in action, that we are the manifestation of what God is because we are created in the image and likeness of God. And as we come to understand that and know that, we take on a new responsibility in our lives. And that responsibility, again, we can accept with enthusiasm, or we can say, oh no, not me. I had a woman who came to our church in El Paso, Texas. And she came for about 3 years. And she actually taught Sunday school and worked in there. And the reason she came is because she rode out one Easter to go to church. And the church she normally went to, the parking lot was full. And she came to our church and it wasn't. And so she came in there. This was soon after I started there, by the way. But anyway, and no ego. But anyway, so she came in. And what she would say a lot of times was, I don't think I want to take on this responsibility that Unity teaches. I don't know if I really want to be there. And she became a good friend. Her husband and Vicki and I became good friends. And then about 3 years later, she said, I just can't handle it anymore. I really don't. Because so what she's done is talked herself into the idea it was too much of a risk. It was too much of a responsibility to be God in action. Okay? And she said, I believe it, but I can't handle it. And so sometimes if we're not careful, we have to understand that we've got to be patient because it takes time to change our core values. It takes time to even recognize that we really don't know the truth when we think we know the truth. And as we work on that, we do it through the power of prayer. That's what Paul was saying. That we do it through the power of prayer. That in prayer, by praying without ceasing, that we are able to really discern what is ours to do and actually do it. There are 2 or 3 things I think are important that are powers that add up to and give us the ability to really be enthusiastic and on fire for life, if you would. And I like to think that that's the way I am most of the time. Although I've got to tell you that Friday night, I was working on the auction. And I went home, and it was 2 days, and I said, I'm going to talk about zeal on Sunday. I don't feel very zealous right now, okay? So what I did is I went into prayer, into meditation, and as I laid in bed that night, I affirmed that the next day I would be filled with joy, I would be enthusiastic, and that I was going to have a great day and enjoy the day and enjoy all the people involved in it. And you know, on Saturday, that's exactly what happened, because I made up my mind to do that. And I thank Vicki because I laid in bed and I tried to think of 5 things that were exciting to me that day. I got 4 of them. I'm still working on the 5th one, but I didn't need another one, okay? I really got 4 of them. And so I set that intention to be in joy. I set that intention to love people and to let that love shine. And I set that intention to be a part of this festival, not as a challenge, but because it was just a great thing to do. And it's a blessing to our church and a blessing to all of us. Well, I'm talking about that. If you want to talk about enthusiasm, talk to Barbara Hess. Is Barbara in here? No, she's downstairs cooking, okay? You know, one of the things I love about Barbara is she does have all the enthusiasm anybody would like. She also has the drive and the sense of direction. She also is able to ask you to do something in such a way that you want to do it. Yeah. And then afterwards you say, why am I doing this? But anyway, no, she really does. She can recruit. She can get people moving. She can get people enthusiastic because she is enthusiastic and because she loves the people in this church. And so she models that beautifully. And people just say yes to her, including myself, because that's the way she operates. That's who she is. She has that enthusiasm. She has that energy that says, yes, let's get this done. So as we look at this, we understand that we need to use the power of power. That's a power, that we need to use the power of power to fuel our energy, fuel our enthusiasm. That we have to take on that mantle of love, as I mentioned a couple minutes ago. And that we have to have wisdom. The knight did not have wisdom. And so therefore, he just went out and was fighting anybody. And what we have to do is have the wisdom to know what to do and how to see others. We do not have to battle anything. We have to embrace everything because the Christ in each and every person is working on our behalf whether we know it or not. And that's our responsibility. That's one of the responsibilities that this person in El Paso was resistant to. Now, there's a couple other things we have to do, I think, and I want to talk about three things. That if I really want to be enthusiastic, if I want to find purpose in life, if I want to figure out what's mine to do, then I have to turn to Spirit to do that. The first thing I will start to recognize is my IQ. Now, I'm talking about this metaphysically. I'm not talking about the number. I'm talking about the idea that I always have something new to learn. And that if I, wanted to become a chemist, that I would have to go back to school and take chemistry courses and graduate with a major or a master's in chemistry. That's the only way I'm going to become a chemist today. If that were a goal, that's what I'd have to look at. What do I need to add to my knowledge base in order to do the job? That can get people in trouble sometimes. I know it has me in the past from time to time. You get so you think you can do anything. And boy, let me tell you, that's the ego running wild. And so what do I need to increase? The second thing is, what do I need to do about my EQ, my emotional quotient? What do I need to do about that? Do I need to learn to deal with people differently? Do I need to pick up some people skills? Do I need to take a course in how to do certain things in leadership? What do I need to do so that I become more powerful, if you would, and I can use the power, the wisdom of God within me? And then the last thing is our spiritual quotient. Our spiritual quotient, the SQ. Spiritual quotient is really based on my understanding of God. Most of us have been taught the Trinity. Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. In unity, we see the Trinity a little differently. Metaphysically, we see it, first of all, as divine mind. Divine mind is where all thought comes from. It's from all thought comes from, and from original thought in particular comes from. And we have to slow down sometimes to get the original thought and not have the same thinking over and over again. The second thing is divine idea. In divine mind, there is a divine idea for everything, and that includes who and what you are. You are an idea in divine mind. You are the perfect idea in divine mind. We may have to forgive ourselves, but God does not forgive us because God sees us as through the eyes of unconditional love. What a difference that makes. I don't have to feel guilty. As a matter of fact, I can feel very worthy of that love because I'm created, again, in the image of God. So there's this divine idea of who I am and where I am to go and what I'm supposed to do. And then the divine idea, the divine mind, gets put into action through divine expression. Okay, divine expression is the executive voice of God. And I know God doesn't have a voice, but think of it that way. Okay, the executive voice of God moving in and through you, giving you guidance and direction. And the way that each of us are built, the nature of God, is that we also have a nature of spirit within us. We are connected to God, if you would, through the power of spirit, through the I am, through the Christ consciousness. And when we accept that and know that, we then can step into that, and we are unlimited in our possibilities. We are unlimited in the opportunities that stand before us. We are unlimited in the ability to see the opportunities and to bring to ourselves all the resources that are needed in order to make our purpose and dream come true. And so that's up to us. And we do that again with enthusiasm. You know, if you don't have enthusiasm, then really not much is going to get done. Imagination just becomes a daydream. Faith becomes I hope. And it doesn't go any further than that. And so we step into this idea again of what is ours to do and how to do it. We use Spirit, and Spirit uses us, and it works both ways, in order to discern what is ours to do. When I was in Unity Seminary, we had a team that we got together to plan the tea for ministers that came in and visited once a year. And about 100 ministers would come in and we'd have a big tea. And it was a fundraiser for our class. And we would take that money and then make a gift, if you would, to the school each year. And I went to a meeting, and an individual named Jennifer Heider, she's now passed away, youngest person in our class. Jennifer led us in a discernment process, which she was phenomenal at. 7 people sat around in a circle. And when we finished saying, what is mine to do? What does that look like? How do I feel about it? What am I excited about? 7 people gave 7 different ideas of what theirs was to do. When you put the 7 ideas together, it made for a complete and whole tea for the ministers. It was phenomenal. And we all said it. And in a half an hour, 45 minutes, we all knew what was ours to do. Now we had to go do it. And Jennifer said as we left, don't think about how to do it. Ask Spirit to provide the resources. That's a different way of thinking. And so as you allow Spirit to provide the resources, what happens is our hearts and our eyes are opened up, and we begin to see, we begin to know that everything is there for us, and it was there already. We just couldn't see it. That's what discernment does. It opens your eyes, it opens your heart, it opens your consciousness to a new way of being. There's a story about a man by the name of Fred Smith. Fred Smith went to Yale, and while he was in Yale, he took a class on innovative marketing, innovative and creative ideas for developing a business. He wrote a paper about developing an air freight company, and that what a great service it could be to the country and to the world. His professor didn't agree with him. He said it was just a dream. It was a bad idea and a bad concept, so he gave him a C- on the paper. Fred Smith didn't care, because 30 years later, as chief executive officer of FedEx, he said, I stuck with my dream. He ended up with 128,000 employees and more than $7 billion in capital. But as he got there, you see, there were times that his enthusiasm must have been challenged. Like when he couldn't meet payroll. He went to the employees, key employees, and said, I can't do it. Can you stick with me for a while? They stuck with him for several months and worked out ways they could go to the bank. He helped them, whatever. Every one of those employees became a multimillionaire because they had the patience, had the understanding, and had the dream that he had to make it a great company. When we stick in there, when we have that stick-to-itiveness, then what happens is things take place the way they're supposed to, and our dreams do come true. You know, Lyle Shaler is one of the most knowledgeable persons in America in the area of church growth and organization. Patty shook her head when I said that earlier today when we remembered it in prayer. What he said is the most crucial factor in church growth is the attitude of the members. The attitude of the members. A common characteristic of growing congregation is their members are enthusiastic, have zeal about their faith, and they want to share that with others in a positive and loving way. I'm not suggesting you become evangelist. I'm suggesting instead is live your life with zeal and enthusiasm, and you will attract people to this congregation. People who walk in here tell us they feel at home. People who walk in here tell us they feel loved. People who walk in here tell us that they want to come back. Most of them, thank God. And so therefore, we know, and you should know, that what you offer is that love, is that power, is that enthusiasm, is the zeal. And as we harvest our zeal, we will see wonderful things happening in our lives individually and collectively. So let's become filled with zeal, filled with enthusiasm, and take the risk to dream whatever you want to dream and stick with it. And so it is. Thank you.